Teterboro's Dalton 2 VFR Departure is designed to reduce ground delays and expedite departures when Newark and Teterboro airports are using a south flow. This procedure will not be offered by controllers. It must be specifically requested by the pilot. Operators can usually expect reduced takeoff delays by requesting the Dalton 2. However, a thorough crew briefing, as well as careful flight path consideration, are required before executing this procedure. In this video, we will examine the important aspects of the Dalton 2 departure. Let's take a closer look at the Dalton 2, starting with the Notes section. Notice that this is a VFR procedure and requires a ceiling of 3,000 feet and a visibility of 3 miles. Because IFR obstacle clearance criteria do not apply, pilots are responsible for maintaining visual clearance from obstacles while executing this departure. As mentioned earlier, pilots wishing to fly the Dalton 2 must specifically request this procedure by its full name. Air traffic control will not assign this procedure without a specific request. Notice the initial climb description on the bottom of the departure chart. After departure, turn right heading 280 as soon as safe and practical. The turn to heading 280 must be completed prior to reaching 2.4 DME from the Teterboro VOR. Note that since this is a VFR departure, a climb to 400 feet is not required prior to beginning the turn. However, pilots should use their judgment on when to begin the turn and are responsible for maintaining visual obstacle clearance at all times. The aircraft's altitude must remain at or below 1,300 feet throughout the procedure. This altitude is necessary to maintain vertical separation from Newark arrivals passing overhead. Based on factors such as the aircraft's weight, stall speed, configuration, performance, and turning radius, the pilot should determine whether this procedure can be executed properly and safely. The pilot also needs to determine which modes of automation, if any, are appropriate for this departure. This decision should be based on the autopilot's capabilities and limitations, as well as the pilot's familiarity and experience with the autoflight system. Next, let's examine the departure's plan view. The Dalton 2 departure is only possible from runway 19. Therefore, the airport must be on a south flow in order to request this procedure. Notice the speed restriction of 180 knots. Careful airspeed management is required in order to keep the aircraft's turn radius to a minimum. To help minimize turn radius and maintain a safe margin above stall, pilots should consider the possibility of keeping high-lift devices extended during this procedure. However, always adhere to the manufacturer's guidance and never exceed any limitations published in the aircraft flight manual. A turn radius warning is provided. This warning emphasizes the need to manage airspeed in order to assure that the turn to heading 280 is completed prior to reaching 2.4 DME from Teterboro VOR. After passing west of the Newark final approach path, a climb clearance can be expected. This climb clearance constitutes activation of the IFR flight plan. Let's watch the Dalton 2 departure procedure in action in one of Flight Safety International's Falcon 900EX Easy flight simulators. We begin our departure roll on runway 19. For this departure, we have elected to use the maximum allowable slat and flap extensions. At pilot's discretion, we start a right turn toward the 280 heading. Remember that the turn must be completed prior to reaching 2.4 DME from the Teterboro VOR. In this example, we have retracted the landing gear, but our high-lift devices have been kept in takeoff position to help manage airspeed and turning radius. Additionally, our climb trajectory is carefully monitored to ensure that we don't overshoot the 1,300-foot altitude constraint. We are now level at 1,300 feet on a heading of 280 with an airspeed of 180 knots or less as required by the procedure. We can soon expect a climb clearance, at which time our IFR flight plan is activated and a normal speed can be resumed. Teterboro's Dalton 2 VFR departure, when requested by the pilot, will usually result in an expedited departure during periods of high traffic or delays. Prior to requesting the Dalton 2, pilots must determine whether both they and their aircraft can properly and safely execute the procedure. On behalf of the Teterboro Users Group and Flight Safety International, thank you for watching and fly safely.